Welcome everyone, and thank you, Robert, for sharing this time with us to talk about what we like the most and to get to know the masterminds behind the stories that touch us. How are you today?
I'm really great, thank you, and I thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. It's really great to talk to you today.
Okay, so let's get to know our guest a little bit better. Robert Bryndza is a British author, best known for his page-turning crime and thriller novels, which have sold over 5 million copies. His crime debut, The Girl in the Ice, was released in February 2016, introducing Detective Chief Inspector Erika Foster. To date, it has sold over 2 million copies in English and has been translated into 29 languages, as well as widely awarded. This saga has 7 installments to date, and at the same time, Robert has published Kate Marshall's crime series, which has 4 books so far. Okay, so let's go to the questions now. Mercedes.
Robert, desde 2016 has tenido una carrera muy prolífica con 2 series que suman 11 libros. ¿Cuál es tu secreto para que tus ideas no se agoten y seguir sorprendiendo al lector?
So, Robert, since 2016, you've developed a very prolific career, 2 crime series with 11 published books. So what is your secret to get so many new ideas and keep captivating your readers?
I don't know if it's a secret. I think I've always been very lucky that I've always got plenty of ideas. I often say I've got too many ideas and not enough time to write them down. But as well as having lots of ideas, I think I'm just quite disciplined on the practical side of things. I always sit down every day and I try and write a certain amount of words. And also I did struggle for a very long time before I was published. And so that's always in the back of my mind. I always feel very grateful that I can do this as a job. So that always spurs me on to just make sure I don't waste time and I don't waste this opportunity as well.
Yeah, it is difficult at the beginning when you try to find a way to get to the people read your books and know you. But I don't think it's just luck. I think you write very well and you have good ideas. Not every idea is a proper idea to write a book, right? So maybe you have to work the idea later, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's always people that have ideas, and there's a lot of people that always say, well, I think I could write a book, and I always say, well, great, go and do it and see how hard it is, because there's plenty of ideas floating around. I think to actually realize it into a full-length book is a really difficult thing, and I didn't start out writing full-length books. I started out writing like skits and sketches for comedy shows and sort of projects and stories that were much more short form to kind of really learn about storytelling. And then I think once I felt I could master that, I was able to make the step to writing longer things like books.
Bien, Robert, sabemos que estudiaste y te dedicaste a la actuación. ¿Hay alguna herramienta o recurso que hayas aprendido como actor y que te fueran útiles a la hora de escribir?
So you went to acting school and worked as an actor for several years. Are there any tools or resources that you learned as an actor and that helped you with your writing?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Reading a lot of plays, I think, really helped me, because as an actor, you need to read something that's just dialogue between just speaking, and you have to be able to interpret it, and you have to be able to turn it into a story on stage, which I think was a big thing for me. And then also when I was a student, what kind of got me into writing in a roundabout sort of way was when I used to do improvisation classes, where you make things up on the spot and you sort of play around. And then I remember in one particular class, the teacher said to us, well, could you write down what you just improvised afterwards, and then we can use it as a script and we can perform it again. And for me, that was a very good training, because it took away the pressure of sitting in front of sitting at a desk with a blank piece of paper, and it sort of got me into writing without it being scary. So yeah, the acting was a huge part of me becoming a writer.
So had you considered writing before that happened, or did that spark the idea in you?
Well, when I was younger, and I think from when I was maybe 10 or 11, I wanted to be a writer. Or I liked writing like little poems and sort of short stories. But where I grew up in England, I didn't live in London, which was back then was very much the capital of, or it was the place to be if you wanted to be a writer. I lived far from the city, and I sort of lived on the coast, and there was no one I knew who was a writer. I didn't have any writers in my world. So I didn't think that it could even be a job. So the next best thing for, I suppose, for my creativity, and I joined my school's theatre group, and that was how I sort of went into writing on a very roundabout. I took a big detour from when I was about 14 until I was maybe 27 before I started writing full time. So yeah.
Sabemos que has escrito al menos una obra de teatro y varias comedias románticas. ¿Qué fue lo que te llevó a explorar las aguas del thriller? Y si crees que puedes incursionar en otros subgéneros en el futuro.
So we know that you have written at least one play, as you said, several romantic comedies. What led you to explore the thriller field? And could you venture into other genres in the future?
Well, I was writing romantic comedies, and I love writing them. I love writing comedies, and I think it was maybe my fifth or my sixth book started to become it did quite well. It was quite successful, and at that point, I kind of thought, well, I want to write crime. And if I don't do it now, I might get sort of typecast or only be known for writing romantic comedies. And I sort of thought this is the point where I take the leap and give it a go, because I wasn't very well known, but I was kind of well known. So that was why I changed to doing crime thrillers, and I feel really lucky that I can write in both of the genres. I've got an idea for a science fiction novel that I would love to write, because I'm a huge science fiction fan as well. But I don't know when I'll have the time, and I don't know. I already feel that I'm quite lucky that I write in two genres. So yeah.
We have read that you feel like different when you write romance, or when you write or even comedy, than when you write crime, right? Your mood change after you write one on another. It's like opposites, and what make you feel it's actually opposite than you are writing, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's true. I think writing comedy is much harder. Maybe it's a little bit more rewarding, because I think it's so difficult to make people laugh. I think that it's not easy to scare people, but like, for example, most people in the world, whether or not you come from, whatever language you speak, whichever country you live in, maybe more so if you're a woman, but even if you're a man, if you walk down a dark street at night and it's frightening and you're on your own, everyone identifies with that. Everyone gets scared. But people have completely different sense of humors. Like what might make me laugh might not make someone else laugh. And so when you write a comedy book, you kind of have to have the ability to make everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people laugh. Yeah. And so for me, that's what is I think the harder thing about comedy is and the more rewarding thing about comedy is being able to do that.
Ahora quisiéramos saber es un poco cómo surgió la idea de tu personaje de Erika Foster.
So how did you come up with Erika Foster's character?
Well, I'm British born, and I lived in Britain until I was about 30, and then I lived in America for a year. And after being in America, I had the choice of whether or not to go back to England or to come to Slovakia, which is where my husband's from. So we came to try and live in Slovakia. And it was at the same time that I was planning on writing a crime thriller. And I thought, well, if I do it, I need to try and make it a bit original and do something that's not been done by other people. And so I thought, well, there isn't a British author who's writing a crime thriller about a Slovak detective who's living in Britain. And I thought that was quite an original thing. So that was the starting point for the Erika Foster series. And then a friend I'd met here, she was kind of the inspiration for Erika Foster at the beginning. But now I think Erika's she's like a real person in her own, world. So I sometimes feel like I'm watching her and writing down what I see. But yeah, that was the starting point for writing Erika.
Yeah, many authors have told us that they can see their characters, like they know how they will react and what they would say in a certain situation.
Tu segunda serie también está protagonizada por una mujer. ¿Hay alguna razón para que vuelvas a emplear un personaje central femenino?
Your second series also stars a woman. Is there a reason why you're using a female central character again?
I think female characters are more interesting to write in the sense that, well, for me, I think that women have a much more difficult time if they're in the world and if they're in positions of power, if they are in charge of men, or if they are doing something that is not expected of them, if that makes sense. And I kind of think with Erika Foster, she's a police officer. She's at a high level and she's in charge of men, and she is a woman, but she shares some traits of men as well. And I just think that's a very interesting mix. And then again, with the Kate Marshall series, the starting point for that, I don't want to give too much away if people haven't read it, but at the beginning, Kate Marshall solves a crime of a serial killer, but it turns out that the serial killer was the man she was involved in a relationship with, and also her boss. So I thought that was a really interesting starting point for the Kate Marshall Private Investigator series, because Kate Marshall does an amazing thing in catching the serial killer, but because she's a woman, she's judged very much on the fact that she was in a relationship with him, even though she didn't know, and that she was sleeping with her boss. And I just found that fascinating as a starting point. So.
¿Cómo te manejas con los aspectos más científicos o técnicos de tus novelas? ¿Te basas en la realidad, tienes asesores o te dejas llevar por la imaginación?
So, how did you handle the most scientific or technical aspects in your novels? Do you talk with specialists or just get information from the web or your imagination?
Both. I use the web a lot, but I've also spoken to experts, ex-police officers and police officers who are still working, and particularly for the Erika Foster series, because it is a police series. Especially in the early days, I spoke to a lot more police officers. A police officer who gave me general advice. There was another police officer I spoke to who was a diving expert. So she would, if there was a dead body in a lake or if something had to be recovered, she would dive down and recover it. And that was, to me, that was fascinating. And a lot of what I spoke to her about is in the beginning of the third Erika Foster book, where Erika finds the body of a young girl in a quarry. So yeah, I find it really good to talk to experts, because as well as them giving you the factual information, they'll very often tell you things or anecdotes or interesting stories that they might not find interesting, but because you don't do that job yourself, it's really fascinating to get that detail. So yeah, and then also, as well as the web YouTube, there's so many YouTube videos. I watched a documentary on one of the psychiatric hospitals for prisoners in the UK, and that was fascinating. And that along with an expert, that was a lot of the research I did for the first book in the Kate Marshall series as well.
Nice. And from those anecdotes, you even can get some ideas, right? Some new ideas from the things that they tell you, right?
Yeah, and often the best experts you talk to, you know, if say I'll send them an early draft of the book and they'll say, well, that wouldn't happen, but I've got this story, this happened. And yeah, you just get the little anecdotes. Like there was what the diving police officer I spoke to. She said that she had to go and recover the body of a man who'd killed himself in a lake, and he'd gone missing. He'd gone missing about 2 weeks beforehand, so his body had probably been in the lake for a long time. And when she dived down, she normally wasn't terrified by this kind of work, but on this day, because of the chemical composition in his body and how he decayed, the man was actually it looked like he was standing on the bottom of the lake, standing upright, the way he was floating. And she didn't find him until she put out her hands, and her hands closed around his ankles. And then he was sort of standing above, and just little stories like that. I put that in the book because it was so interesting. And the way she told me the story, she had so much emotion as well. So,
yeah, that's a great research. Yeah.
Bien, ¿y alguna vez te has inspirado en un hecho real o has considerado la posibilidad de hacerlo?
Have you ever used true events as inspiration, or have you considered the possibility of doing it? Of course, you've been telling us that the people you talk to tell you their stories, but like a well-known case or something like that?
I try not to, because I know that there's, as well as the real life criminal, there's real life victims, and there's people who are still alive who were involved in the cases. I think a couple of times maybe I've just mentioned a case, but in terms of real life experiences, real life events, I did, the inspiration for the second Erika Foster book was when someone tried to break into the apartment we were living in London, and I woke up in the night and went into the living room, and someone was trying to get into the window, and I suppose that's not technically based on true events, but it was something that happened to me and terrified me, and that was the starting point for one of the books. So I suppose I'll use it if it happens to me more than if it happens to someone else.
Yeah.
Has ganado varios premios literarios, has sido autor superventas en más de una ocasión, has sido traducido a 29 idiomas. ¿Te queda algún sueño por cumplir como escritor?
You are a best-selling author. You won several literary prizes, and your books have been translated to 29 languages. Do you have any other achievements left to accomplish as a writer?
I think so. I think that it's nice. I feel like I've achieved something now, and I feel the confidence to carry on writing. But I think in the writing world, I think it almost gets harder and harder to keep at the level you are at, and to make sure that your work is still just as good. So I suppose the achievement that I'd like is to maintain the quality in the work that I do, because I think maybe sometimes when authors become successful, you there's not so much pressure, and I know that I work well under pressure, and so I always try to keep that in mind, and to see that the thing that I want to achieve is to just, go on and write more books that are just as good as the ones from before, if not better.
Siempre nos gusta preguntarle a nuestros entrevistados acerca de sus planes a futuro. ¿En qué estás trabajando actualmente? Siempre que nos puedas contar.
So we always like to ask the people we interview about their plans for the future. Are you currently working on anything that you can share a little about?
Yes, I'm just working on the next Erika Foster book, which in the English language publication schedule, this is the 8th book. So I'm very excited about that, and I don't want to give too much away, but this is a book that kind of ties up some loose ends from other books, and sees Erika sort of moving on from a lot of the traumas in her life, and so in this one it explores a bit of Erika Foster's past, which is very interesting to me, as well as being a murder mystery. So yeah, I'm very excited. I've been writing that now for about a month and a half, and it's going really well.
Okay, so in Spanish we only have 6 so far, so we are waiting for the 7th.
So I'm curious, do you read the reviews of your books and you take some information from there, or you are not the kind of writer that look for
I know. Well, I do. Yeah, I do read them, and I think once it gets to a certain amount, I kind of relax a little bit. I think when it's first published, it's very interesting to sort of see what people are saying, and yeah. But I think in life we're all attracted to the negative more. So you kind of you might get a load of good reviews, and then you sort of dwell maybe a bit more on the bad reviews, which is something that I try not to do. But yeah, and I mean, I think it is important to read the reviews, because then, especially when you're writing a series, you can get a lot of feedback from readers, about what they think of things, and I'm lucky that I get quite a lot of messages from readers as well, which is great, and they often will tell me what they think, and I've a few times I've put in the back of the books, let me know what you think, which has been quite an interesting thing to do as well.
Yeah, you have we have been reading some of the sixth book, which we have read, and you have a really good reviews. People loves your work. So yeah, you have some others that are not that good, but you have the most of them are really, really good. So
yeah, no, I'm
really nice.
I'm lucky, I think, in that respect, and I always think as well that I write for readers. I don't write for sort of prizes or well, I say I don't write for reviewers. I think most readers now are reviewers, so that's not a fair thing to say. But I mean, I don't write to be reviewed in newspapers or sort of that kind of thing. I definitely always have the readers in mind, because they're the kings. They're the ones that buy the books. They're the people that are most important. So yeah.
Como ya estamos llegando al final de nuestra entrevista, Robert, nos gustaría que les dejaras un mensaje a todos aquellos fans de tus libros, en especial de la serie de Erika Foster, y también a aquellos que no te han leído y quieras que estén en ese camino como nosotras de Erika Foster.
Okay, so we are getting to the end of the interview, and we'd like you to leave a message to your loyal readers, and also to all the people who haven't read your books yet.
To all my loyal readers, thank you for your loyalty. I really appreciate every one of you. I love the fact that you come back and you carry on with my series books, and you just know that every time I write a book, I think of you, and I want them to be the best for you that I can. And for all the new readers, I hope you pick up one of my books. I mean, I write series books, but I always make sure that each series book is a book you can pick up, and you don't need to have read the rest of the series. Each book can be a standalone book, so you can just start wherever you want.
Bien, gracias a todos por acompañarnos. No olviden darle like a este video, suscribirse al canal y activar la campanita para no perderse las futuras entrevistas. And Robert, thank you so much for sharing this time with us.
Thank you. Really good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.